All right, so this is an overview of the little income template I put together. So as you can see here, this page we're just tracking, income expenses, and we're breaking it down based on gig types that I have listed out up here, which you can modify. But before I really go into how to use this thing, I just want to go over everything that's here that you can look into. So first and foremost, tracking income over time as compared to expenses. And on the right, what are your money making months? This takes the average of each month um, you're working for. So if you only have 1 year, let's say you only worked 2018, this is only going to take the average of your 2018 months. But if you go back farther, it will take into account previous years and it will do the math for you. So down here, depending on which types of gigs you enter in up here, this will show you, hey, how many gigs you had for each type. Likewise, this is the same thing, but for actual revenue. So as you can see here, 2017, I did about 50 bar gigs, but the percentage of revenue was disproportionate to the amount of gigs I did because you don't really get paid very much for bar gigs. However, my weddings for last year, I only did maybe, I don't know, 10 for 2018, 10 or 15, but it's a huge percentage. So this helps you see that. Likewise, this is just basically the same information, but just shown differently. Sometimes I like to see the bars as opposed to the share through time. And then down here, this is one I added last minute. So this one here, this will show you what months, this will show you your income that you book when you book it. So for example, I have 1950 here for June. So this means on total, because it was just easier to tally it up and add it together, but it still gives you a good sense of when your gigs are coming in. So for example, in June, I've booked $1,950 in June of gigs. Now, to make that clear, that's not when I did the gigs. That's when, someone called me up and they booked me for some date in the future. So this gives you a sense of when the stuff is coming in for you, um, which I thought was is pretty valuable to know. If let's say you go through a 2 month stretch and you're like, man, like nothing's coming in, you could look back at your data and it can show you, okay, well, this is normal for me this type of year. So let's say, for let's assume like, okay, in April, it's maybe you have gigs, in April. So I have some gigs in April coming in, but I didn't book anything in April. You're like, oh man, I haven't booked anything in April. Well, that's kind of fine because nothing really comes in typically in April. So it helps gives you a sense of, you know, when stuff is going to be when stuff is coming in and when stuff isn't coming in. And moving down here, this is just broken down of where are your gigs coming from? Where's your money coming from? And these sources you can change to whatever you want, but I thought these were pretty good buckets. You can change these to whatever you see fit. You just have to then type them. You have to match your tagging in your years later on. So for example, here, sort, you just have to make sure this text matches up what's over here. But this is useful because this shows you, hey, like, where's your money coming from? If you're dumping a ton of money into paid marketing, but that share that's not really paying out for you very much, you can see how that's changing through time. So I started out and I was only getting gigs word of mouth. That was the only way I was getting money. But through time, I started, making connections in the industry, so my green started popping up. Paid marketing was working out okay for me. But this is very useful just to see through time where your money's coming from, which I thought was more important than where your number of gigs are coming from, unless you know you really want to do the bar gigs. You don't really care about the money. Well, then you can kind of look up here at your tallies and just do it on your own. But in any case, so this is page one, and then page two. This goes deeper into your revenue calculations for the year. And I figured, well, if I'm going to be doing the calculations anyway, I might as well show it through time. So for each year, going back to 2014, and then I go all the way up to 2024. So I'll show the year itself, and then I'll compare it to the previous year. So 2014, that was year one. We're not going back farther than that. So 2015, okay, this is how 2015 in the blue compared to 2014. 2016 versus 2015. You can see, okay, my pattern is starting to show up here. And thankfully there's growth, so that's good. 2017, boom, like similar patterns, but we're growing. It helps, like, you can kind of race yourself, like in Gran Turismo. You can see what your previous time was and try and beat it each month. 2018 versus 2017, boom, you can see patterns still kind of intact. And then 2019, a lot of this is sample data, and I haven't really validated it too much, but it's still illustrative of what I was doing up until around January when I put this together. And then here's the overall calculation, which is, this is the same graph that's on the previous page. Likewise, this one. So this is the sum per month. This is when you book the gigs, and then this is when you made the money. So you booked gigs in January, then you made the money in, let's say, December. And just to go through a sample year. So this is kind of complicated, but the default is, you don't have to see any of the stuff off the top if you don't want to. And I put this pop up in here to flag, hey, don't touch this stuff, because all this stuff is going to auto-populate based on what you put down here. So essentially, I put this together so you can have an idea of what kind of taxes you should be paying each quarter, because if you're running your own business and that's your only form of income, the feds want your estimated taxes every quarter. And oh, by the way, the quarters are not 3 months. Some of them are 3, some of them are 2. So it's all jacked up, and I put this together to help you get a sense of what you should be paying as you're booking the gigs. So obviously, as you can see down here, there's the name of the gig, whatever you want to call it. This was, I put as the date of the event, and then when you got paid, which is important because the feds calculate your taxes based on when you got paid. So you could have done the gig on December 31st, but if you get paid January 1st, guess what? The feds don't care for the previous year. That counts towards the following year, and vice versa. Put a flag as a deposit. Let's go to the year that has it. Deposits. Flag the deposit. So this just helps me tally up, your gigs and whatnot, and to do some math. But essentially, if it's a deposit, just put yes. Put in your mileage, because this will help calculate expenses. I have a mileage rate thing over here, and you can change this to whatever it is for that year. These are just some of the federal and state tax rates that I put in here. And, don't take my word for it that this is what you should use. These are just illustrative. But when you put this stuff in, all these fields are going to populate for you. These fees are going to populate for you. So if you booked a gig on Gig Masters, let's say, you had to pay a $14 fee. So we delete here, and boom, it changes up here. Let's go back. So it basically has, you know, filters on your payment dates and whatnot. And same for your gross revenue, whenever that's coming in. So if I hit delete 250, we should see that change. Boom. We saw it change over here. And it'll show you the breakdown. Hey, here's your wedding revenue that month, your private gig revenue, your bar revenue, and these three you can change up here. You can change these, and that will pass through everything. Sources will key off of your sources, gig type. Yeah, type over that. And then this last column will be the date you booked. So you'll have 3 dates for each gig. So let's say I picked up this agency bar gig on 1/1/2018. This is a column I put in to calculate the month, and then all that's referenced in the graphs I put together. And I have this for every single year going out, like however many years to 2024. And page 1, if you don't want to listen through this malarkey, me rambling on, this is basically your order of operations. So to create your own, go to File, make a copy, type out whatever you want to call it, and then save it to your Google Drive. And that's basically your only requirement here. And then it'll be yours. And then I walk through, the things you can change. So if you want to use different event types up here, so let's say you don't do any weddings, but you do clubs, you can do clubs, private bars, or you can put in whatever you want. Maybe you're a photographer, you want to do weddings, engagement shoot, whatever, mitzvahs, or whatever you want to put in. And likewise, put in the tax rates you want for that particular year. So, whatever the mileage rate is for the tax year, whatever federal rate you want to assume for your business, whatever the state rate is, and all this stuff will trickle through. So let's say I don't like 5%. Let's say I'm in some ridiculous state like New Jersey, it's like 9% or something. All this stuff will change for you. And if we go over, boom, you see the breakdown of your revenue for the year, your expenses, and your taxes, and by the way, there's your take-home pay. Everyone always says, oh yeah, $250 is pretty good for a night at the bar. Well, if you're paying taxes, that $250 goes away real quick. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. If you got any questions, feel free to email me, dan@djdanmarin.com.